What if you're not lazy? What if the thing you've been calling laziness your entire life is actually something much darker? Because lazy people don't usually feel guilty. They don't lie awake at night thinking about everything they should have done. They don't carry the constant weight of unfinished goals. They don't hate themselves for wasting time. But you do, don't you? So maybe the problem isn't laziness. Maybe you've been running from something, and maybe you've been running for years. Most people spend their entire lives fighting the wrong enemy. They call themselves lazy, weak, undisciplined, unmotivated, broken. So they attack themselves harder. They force themselves to work, push harder, consume more self-improvement content, look for more motivation, and yet, nothing changes. Because you cannot solve a problem you don't understand. And laziness is one of the most misunderstood problems in modern life. Because what looks like laziness from the outside often feels completely different on the inside. Let's be honest. You know exactly what you should be doing. You've watched the videos, read the advice, made the plans, created the schedules. You've promised yourself 100 times that tomorrow would be different. But then tomorrow arrives, and somehow you end up doing the same things again. Scrolling, avoiding, distracting yourself, escaping. And afterward comes the guilt, the self-hatred, the disappointment, the familiar voice that says, "What's wrong with me? Have you ever noticed that?" The cycle is always the same. Avoid, feel relief, feel guilty, promise to change, repeat. That isn't laziness, that's emotional escape. Because the truth most people never realize is this. Human beings rarely avoid work. They avoid feelings. Read that again. People don't escape tasks. They escape emotions attached to tasks. The anxiety, the fear, the uncertainty, the possibility of failure, the possibility of not being good enough. The possibility of discovering that the dream you've been holding on to might not happen. That is what you're really running from. And modern life has given us endless places to hide. A phone, a screen, a video, a game, a notification. A distraction available every second of every day. The moment discomfort appears, escape is one tap away, which means something dangerous starts happening. Instead of processing difficult emotions, you learn to avoid them. Instead of facing reality, you learn to numb it. Instead of confronting fear, you learn to distract yourself from it. And eventually, your brain builds a pattern. Discomfort equals escape. Stress equals escape. Fear equals escape. Boredom equals escape. Loneliness equals escape. The response becomes automatic, not because you're weak, because your brain has been trained. Every escape creates temporary relief, and relief feels good. Your brain remembers that. So the next time discomfort appears, it sends you back to the same behavior, again, and again, and again, until one day you start calling it your personality. I'm just lazy. No, you're trapped. There's a difference. Because lazy people don't desperately want to change. You do. Lazy people don't constantly think about becoming better. You do. Lazy people don't feel pain when they waste another day. You do. The reason you're suffering is because a part of you already knows. You know you're capable of more. That's why it hurts. The guilt isn't proof you're lazy. A guilt is proof you're aware. And awareness is where everything begins. But here's where the trap becomes even deeper. Most people don't realize what they're actually escaping. They think they're escaping work, but often they're escaping themselves. The version of themselves they don't want to meet. The insecure version, the afraid version, the uncertain version, the version carrying years of disappointment, the version still haunted by old failures. Because when the distractions stop, those parts start speaking. And many people spend years trying to silence them. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable silence feels sometimes? How quickly you reach for your phone? How quickly you search for stimulation? How quickly you try to fill empty space? Most people won't admit this, but they're terrified of being alone with their own thoughts. Because deep down, they know something is unresolved, something unhealed, something avoided. And that's the hidden truth behind so much procrastination. It's not about productivity, it's about emotional avoidance. The task isn't scary, the feeling attached to the task is. The project isn't overwhelming, the possibility of failure is. The goal isn't painful, the uncertainty is. And once you see that, everything changes, because now the enemy has a face. Now you're no longer fighting laziness. You're facing fear. You're facing avoidance. You're facing emotional survival patterns that were built long before you understood them. And that realization is powerful, because you stop attacking yourself. You stop treating yourself like the problem. Instead, you become curious. You start asking different questions. Not, why am I so lazy? But what am I trying not to feel? That question changes everything. Because every escape behavior is protecting something. Every distraction is hiding something. Every avoidance pattern is pointing towards something. And once you identify it, the spell begins to break. Not overnight, now, instantly. Oh. It can be a weird name that doesn't do any of it. But gradually, because awareness creates choice, and choice creates freedom, you begin catching yourself before the escape. You begin noticing the feeling underneath it. You begin realizing that discomfort isn't danger, it's information. A signal, a message, an invitation to face something real. And every time you stay present instead of escaping, you take back a little control, not over your productivity, over your life. Because the goal was never to become someone who works harder. The goal is to become someone who no longer needs to run, someone who can sit with discomfort, face uncertainty, feel fear, and still move forward. That is where transformation begins. Not when motivation arrives, not when life becomes easier, but when escape stops being your default response to reality. And maybe, for the first time in years, you stop running. The problem was never that you were lazy. The problem was that reality became painful, and escape became easier. The moment you stop running from what you feel, you finally start moving toward who you are.